Welcome to my channel again. Today I'm going to talk about audio compression. So I'm using Cubase, which is the software that I usually work with, but you can use other software like Logic, Pro Tools or Reaper. It doesn't matter. I'm going to explain how to use a compressor in very basic terms. I'm going to use a very simple example, which is a drum beat. This one. I also apologize for the sound quality, but I'm capturing the audio of this video using my webcam, so sorry about that. It's not the most professional sound, but it's enough for you to understand how a compressor works. So basically, what a compressor does, as the name says, it compresses sound. People usually think that a compressor makes things louder, but it's exactly the opposite. Compressor makes things quieter. But it also affects other aspects of audio, like dynamic range, for instance. So a compressor, you usually have an input signal over here, and you have an output signal. And the way that the compressor works is that it analyzes the input signal and it compresses the signal from a certain amount. So the first thing that you need to be aware of is the threshold. So the threshold basically, and if I use this slider over here, so if I'm push the slider down, as you can see, the level, it's also coming down. And this point over here is the point where the compressor starts to operate. This is very important because, for instance, let's say that I have I want to compress my drums, but I don't want to compress the entire sound. I just want to compress a little bit. So I will probably do something like this. Okay, so I would push the slider just maybe 10 dBs down, so it can only operate at the peaks of the input level. If I want to compress the entire sound, meaning the kick, the cymbals, the snare I would just push the slider down. I would compress this entire region over here. So it's important to notice that just by moving the threshold, I'm going to affect the compression. The other important button is the ratio button, and this button over here, it basically relates the input signal to the output signal. So if it's 1-to-1, it means there is no compression, because for every 1 decibel on the input signal is related to 1 decibel of the input signal. If I start to increase the ratio, it means that this relation is no longer valid. And what it means is that I'm compressing the sound and I'm smashing the sound above my threshold level. So this is the threshold level, and over here I'm not compressing. Starting from this point, I'm compressing, and if I want to compress a lot, I would probably put the ratio at the very high level. Just one side note, if the ratio is infinite to 1, it means that this is working as a limiter, so the signal is totally squashed. So now I'm going to use our beat, and I'm going to run it through the compressor. So there's no compression, so the compressor is working, but there is no compression being done because the ratio is 1-to-1 and the threshold is at 0. Now if I move the threshold down, there's no compression again because the ratio is at 1-to-1. So let's say that I just want to compress the peaks of the kick and the snare, because those are the elements that are the most loud in my example. Here I'm compressing the sound. As you can see, the volume has dropped. So I'm having around 4 to 5 decibels of gain reduction. This is GR, means gain reduction. So if I increase the ratio, the gain reduction increases. Of course, if I decrease the ratio, the gain reduction decreases. Now that if I increase the threshold up to 0, the compressor is not working. And if I start decreasing the threshold, then I get very heavily compressed sound, even if the ratio is like 1 or 2 decibels. And as you can see, the entire signal is being compressed, and not only the peaks. So this drastically changed the sound of my output audio file. Okay, so this sounds quite unnatural. It can be used for some certain applications of sound, but I'm going to increase the threshold and just compress the peaks of my bit. Okay, now I have these buttons over here, and no, I need it so. These buttons mainly they let you choose how fast the compressor works when he analyzes the sound and when he stops doing the compression. The compression. This might vary from compressor to compressor, but so basically I have an attack, which means small attack or slow attack, or this is a fast attack, sorry. This is a fast attack, means that the compressor starts operating at once, and if I change this, means that the compressor takes some time to operate. Then I have the release button, which is just change it a little, which is so for instance, when the compressor triggers this point, it takes 60 milliseconds to operate. But once the input signal goes below this point over here, it might take some time for the compressor to stop compressing. So that is the release signal. Usually this old, most of the compressors don't have this function over here. And I'm not even sure what it is, to be honest. But I usually just work with attack and release on other plugins that I use. I usually don't use this plugin, but since it came with Cubase and it's pretty straightforward to use, I decided to show it. So in our example, just increase the volume a bit. So as you can see, the compressor reacts very fast here. If I start to increase, it works in a smoother way. So it doesn't compress the transients, the very fast notes like the snare, but it kind of smooths the sound. So this can be useful for certain types of sound. And the release, so as you can see, this bar over here is taking a long time to move up and down. So it means that the compressor is working in a slow way, so to speak. Okay. So why is this important? Because we need to think about what we are compressing. So for instance, if we are compressing drums, it probably means that I would use a fast attack because I want to compress the peaks of the sound. I'll probably also use a fast release because I want also to the compressor to stop working once the threshold, once the signal is below my threshold. So I want to adapt the dynamic of my sound to the compressor. If, for instance, I'm compressing vocals, or if I'm compressing, for instance, strings, then I will probably change this, and I'll probably change the attack and the release to values that are more slow and that make the sound smoother. Another important thing over here is the analysis button. It's just a way the compressor analyzes the sound. It can analyze the sound on the peak or using the RMS value. Now, as I told you before, the compressor makes things quieter. So that's why we need to have a button which is called the makeup, which basically places the volume or the loudness of our our sound to the previous level. So let's say, okay, I'm going to compress a little bit more. So I'm going to increase the ratio. So if I do bypass, this is the original sound, and this is my sound now. Okay, just compress a little bit more. Okay, so I do something like this. Sorry about that. So original sound, compressed sound. So what we usually do, we use the makeup. AM means auto makeup gain. It means that the compressor automatically calibrates itself to match the loudness of the input signal. But of course, we can do this manually. Bypass and compressed, but with the makeup volume to match both signals. And this is the way that we usually must work with the compressor. We must analyze the signal at more or less the same volume, but compressed and uncompressed. I mean, there's so much more to say about this. I'm not going to. Here we have auto release, so we can also the compressor can also, as a function that can also determine the release of the signal automatically. There's also important is this button over here. I didn't show, which is soft knee. So soft knee on our knee basically it lets you smooth the curve. So something like this, like two straight lines connected on this point, means hard knee compression, which means that the compressor is going to sound more harsh. Soft knee means that the compressor over this area has a more curved approach. So the sound is kind of smoother. This is I ratio. Okay, I ratio is working as a limiter basically. So in this case, I ratio, this is compression with a very high ratio, which means it's working as a limiter. Means that the sound is completely squashed. You can use a limiter, for instance, on the mastering phase when you want to bring up the volume of the entire song. I don't use limiting on mixing purposes. Doesn't make any sense. And actually, I don't use that much compression. I also use automation. Because if we start compressing everything, it has the side effect of reducing the dynamic range of the signal. So when we are compressing the signal, we are making the signal quieter, but we are also decreasing the dynamic range, which is the difference between the loudest part of the sound and the quietest part of the sound. So this is a very basic tutorial. I hope you have enjoyed it. There's also this button over here which I don't use, which enables you to mix the input signal with the output signal. This is something similar to parallel compression, which probably you have heard. It's not the same thing, but it's kind of a similar approach. I usually don't use this. I usually keep this to 0 because I want to work with a compressor, and that's my preferred way of working. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and stay tuned and please subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much.